The hem of Clara Durant's life was unraveling, one pulled thread at a time. She noticed it first in the small things, the sudden slack in customer inquiries, the way the morning light failed to gild the bolts of silk in her studio the way it used to, the growing shroud of silence, where chatter and laughter had once lingered like stray sequins on the hardwood floor. Mirabelle Bridal had thrived for almost a decade, its polished brass sign a beacon to couples hunting for the perfect gown. But something had shifted. Bride still came, yet Clara no longer felt the old current of anticipation zip under her skin. It wasn't difficult to trace the moment that current flickered out. She had stood in the back pew at her sister Elaine's wedding 6 months earlier, wearing the slate blue satin dress she herself had fashioned, when Elaine's groom stammered out an apology before disappearing through a side door. A hushed ripple passed over the congregation, and Clara saw her sister's shoulders stiffen beneath layers of gauzy tulle. In the hush that followed, Clara realized every stitch she had ever placed for her clients had relied on an assumption she had never dared question. Love is durable. Vows are binding. Devotion is stronger than fear. Now, faced with her sister's bewildered tears, that assumption disintegrated like tissue paper in rain. Back at the studio, Clara kept working. She still measured fabric and pinned darts, still guided brides through the delicate ceremony of slipping into their gowns. What she no longer did was believe. Each yes whispered before her mirrors felt like a lie delivered into a microphone. She went through the motions with a seamstress's precision, but none of a designer's passion, and the difference was palpable. Sales dipped. Her assistant Eve began leaving brochures from bridal expos on Clara's desk like urgent letters from a foreign aid worker. Clara merely stacked them in neat, untouched piles. One rainy Tuesday in early March, Clara locked the door behind the day's final appointment, a giggly 22-year-old who'd chosen a sheath dress skimpier than a cocktail napkin and allowed herself to sag against the work table. An oceanic fatigue rolled through her. She slid off her shoes, flexed her sore toes, and closed her eyes, inhaling the scent of steamed organza. Somewhere beyond the shutters, traffic hissed on wet asphalt. That was when the knock sounded. 3 polite taps, uncertain but resolute. Clara peeked through the curtain and saw a man on the stoop cradling a muslin-wrapped bundle against his chest. His umbrella dripped onto his shoes. He looked mid-30s, lean and drenched in an aura of careful composure. Something about him tugged at her curiosity enough that she unlatched the lock and opened the door. "Apologies for dropping by without an appointment," he said. His voice was low, warm, though edged with hesitancy. "I tried calling, but no one picked up." "Our phone's been temperamental," Clara replied, though in truth she had let it ring earlier, too weary to talk. "How can I help you?" He shifted the bundle, revealing a hint of ivory lace. "I was wondering if you'd consider a different kind of project. My wife's wedding dress. I'd like it altered." He paused the way someone might before stepping into cold surf. "Into a christening gown." Clara invited him inside before rain soaked the delicate fabric. She guided him to the long cutting table where he laid the bundle with deliberate tenderness. When the muslin folded back, Clara's throat constricted. The dress was exquisite. Classic A-line, appliqued with Alençon lace. The bodice embroidered by a hand that understood restraint. It had yellowed faintly, the way antique pages do, as though time itself had pressed a forgotten flower within its folds. Clara traced a fingertip over the scalloped edge, instinctively evaluating seam strength and grain. The more she examined, the more she sensed the personality of its designer, some long-retired couturier who'd breathed her own faith into every stitch. faith that once came easily to Clara and now felt unreachable. "I'm Gabriel Lawson," the man said. "This was my wife Hannah's. She wore it 8 years ago." He gave a tiny, apologetic smile. "Hannah passed away last spring, shortly after our daughter was born. Lily will be baptized in June." I thought, well, Hannah would have wanted her gown to be part of it. The words settled between them like falling ash. Clara had known grief, her mother's slow decline years earlier, but she had never watched love halt in mid-stride like this. Something about the man's quiet sincerity breached the barricade she'd built around her own cynicism. Still, she forced herself to remain professional. "Do you have a design in mind?" she asked, unfolding a measuring tape. "Not exactly," Gabriel admitted. "A simple christening dress. I don't want the gown destroyed. Maybe preserve the skirt's lace, shorten it, add a little jacket." He searched Clara's face for reassurance that his request was possible, not sacrilegious. She studied the dress again, visualizing potential transformations. Cut the skirt below the knee, repurpose panels of lace into puffed sleeves, fashion a bonnet from excess tulle. It would be labor-intensive, but feasible. More than that, it felt meaningful, a chance to coax new life from dormant fabric. "I can do it," Clara said, surprising herself with the surge of conviction. "We'll create something beautiful for Lily." She glanced up. "We'll need fittings to ensure the proportions are right. Bring the baby in, if you're comfortable." "I can manage that," Gabriel said, relief softening the rigid line of his shoulders. "Thank you, Miss Durant." "Clara," she corrected gently. "Clara," he repeated, carefully folding the syllables, as if testing a fragile ornament before hanging it on a branch. After he left, she cleared the tabletop, smoothed the dress, and began pinning reference notes onto white paper squares. Seam A to H, salvage lace motif. She felt, for the first time in months, a pulse of purpose. Not the glitzy euphoria weddings used to supply, but something steadier, like a lamp turned low against twilight. She didn't question it. She simply threaded her needle and began. 2 days later, Gabriel returned with baby Lily. The infant was a dimpled constellation of giggles, tufts of walnut brown hair escaping her knitted cap. While Gabriel bounced her on one arm, Clara measured the circumference of Lily's plump limbs, noting where folds of chiffon might irritate delicate skin. Lily grabbed for Clara's tape measure, gumming the end while babbling an operatic monologue. The sound carved new rooms of warmth in Clara's heart she hadn't known were boarded up. When Lily sneezed, Gabriel's face flickered with paternal alarm. Clara handed him a muslin scrap to dab her nose, and their fingers brushed. He apologized. She smiled. The moment evaporated, but not entirely. Over the next 6 weeks, Gabriel and Lily became regular fixtures in the shop. They arrived with stroller, diaper bag, and a thermos of coffee Gabriel always offered to share. Clara found herself looking forward to the muffled ring of the door chime that announced them. It puzzled her, this budding anticipation she attempted to hide behind professional detachment, yet she didn't curb it. Something in her was stirring after a long season of cold. The project progressed in gentle increments. Clara detached the skirt, steam-pressed each panel, and hand-washed the lace in a basin of lavender-scented water. She worked late into evenings. The studio hushed but for the tick of her wall clock and the faint hum of traffic outside. Unlike bridal gowns, whose deadlines hovered like freight trains, this commission felt meditative. She stitched while summoning images of Hannah on her wedding day, imagined the promise bound into the delicate seams. She whispered apologies to the absent woman for the necessity of cutting into her dress, then promised, with each careful snip, to honor her memory. "I keep thinking Hannah would laugh at me fussing over details," Gabriel admitted one afternoon as he watched Clara tack lace onto the tiny bodice. She was the practical one. I was the dreamer. He rocked Lily's carrier with his foot. She went into labor early. Complications. I never even got to say goodbye properly. Clara paused, needle midair. I'm sorry. He shrugged, an attempt at nonchalance that looked like armor polished too thin. You survive because you have to, because someone needs you. He reached for Lily's hand. But it helps to have projects that feel constructive, Clara understood. We're making a bridge, she said softly. From her story to Lily's. He nodded, eyes shining. Exactly. In the quiet that followed, something inside Clara knit itself closer to whole. April spilled into May. The city's trees budded with bright green confetti, and sunlight filtered through Clara's tall windows, illuminating dust motes like miniature planets. Clara discovered that grief has many dialects. Gabriel's arrived in the sudden cessation of his speech, the way his gaze sometimes fixed on a corner of the studio as though seeing through it. Clara's own grief, for the innocence she'd lost, for her sister's shattered trust in matrimony, hid in a tightening behind her ribs when brides paraded selfies of jeweled rings. But inside the cocoon of the studio, Clara and Gabriel found language beyond those dialects. Shared smiles when Lily burbled, quiet collaboration over design decisions, the silent rounding of shoulders, bent together above fabric swatches. One evening, after pressing appliques under a dim lamp, Clara realized she was humming. Then she realized the tune, a lullaby her mother used to sing while sewing handkerchiefs. Startled, she let the note trail off. She couldn't remember the last time music had escaped her throat unbidden. She let herself hum again, this time consciously, and felt as though she were stepping onto a thin layer of ice. Yet the ice held. The christening gown neared completion. Pearl buttons the size of snowflakes down the back, pin tuck pleats on the skirt that echoed Hannah's original bodice pattern, and a detachable sash of the softest ivory satin, a keepsake Lily could perhaps someday wrap around her own bouquet. Clara embroidered Hannah's initials along the sash's underside, along with Lily's and the date of the baptism, using pale blue thread for something blue. When she presented this detail to Gabriel, his breath caught audibly. He traced the stitches with reverence. "Thank you," he whispered, voice hoarse. Clara shrugged, cheeks warm. It felt right. The final fitting took place on a sun-drenched Saturday morning. Gabriel placed Lily on the customer pedestal, steadying her while Clara slid the gown over her head. Lily cooed, clutching a fistful of lace. The dress fit perfectly, cascading to her ankles like a miniature waterfall. In the mirror's reflection, Clara saw Gabriel's expression soften into something like wonder mixed with sorrow, a bittersweet chord that resonated inside her. Lily squealed, a high, triumphant note, and all three adults laughed. "Would you like photographs for your portfolio?" Gabriel asked afterward. Clara hesitated. She'd largely stopped marketing herself these last months, relying on word of mouth. But the gown deserved to be seen. More than that, she wanted something tangible from this project to keep. She fetched her camera and snapped pictures as Gabriel lifted Lily into the air, her gown billowing like wings. A beam of light slanted across them, illuminating dust motes and the faint gold in Gabriel's dark hair. Clara's chest squeezed with an emotion she didn't dare name. The baptism fell 2 weeks later at St. Augustine's, a stone church with arched windows that scattered jewel-colored light across pews. Clara hadn't been invited per se, but Gabriel had mentioned the date, adding shyly, "You're welcome, of course, if you're free." That tentative invitation had echoed inside Clara for days. On the morning of, she found herself buttoning a pale lavender dress, taming her curls with a pearl hairpin. She hardly recognized the glow in her own cheeks. Inside St. Augustine's, Choir voices drifted overhead like silk ribbons. Clara slid into a rear pew, unsure whether Gabriel would even spot her in the crowd of relatives. But as the organ ended its prelude, Gabriel turned from the front, scanning the congregation. When his gaze found her, his shoulders eased, and he inclined his head in silent greeting. The gesture warmed Clara more than the sun, even as it unsettled her in its intimacy. The ceremony unfolded with solemn sweetness. Lily, resplendent in her gown, blinked at the priest in drowsy wonder, while holy water dripped onto her forehead. When the congregation prayed, Clara bowed her head. Though prayer wasn't a habit of hers, she found herself silently thanking Hannah for the life she had given and the love she had left behind. Afterward, families gathered on the church lawn beneath budding maples. Clara lingered at the edge, uncertain whether to intrude, but Gabriel approached, carrying Lily. "Someone wants to thank you," he said. Lily reached for Clara's necklace with chubby fingers, squealing. Clara laughed, steadying the baby, while Gabriel relinquished her into her arms. "She's gorgeous," Clara murmured. "You stitched her armor," Gabriel said. "Hannah would be grateful." Clara met his eyes, blue flecked with gray. A hush seemed to fold around them, despite the surrounding chatter. For the first time, Clara allowed herself to consider what might happen after this day. Beyond fabric and fittings, between herself and the man before her. The thought both frightened and exhilarated her. Aunties began to corral relatives toward the fellowship hall for cake. Gabriel gestured. "Would you join us? I don't want to intrude on family." "You're not intruding." The assurance was gentle but firm. She followed him inside, where she was introduced as the artisan behind Lily's gown. Compliments flooded her like warm tea. She accepted them with newfound humility, thinking how different this felt from bridal expos, where she'd once preened beneath spotlights. Here, praise was laced with genuine gratitude, not consumerist hunger. As they ate almond cake, Gabriel's mother took Clara's hand. "My daughter-in-law would be so pleased," she said. "You've given us a piece of her back." Clara's eyes stung. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Later, when guests dwindled, Gabriel walked Clara to her car beneath the mellow afternoon sky. Lily slept in his arms, her christening bonnet askew. They paused by Clara's hatchback, silence stretching like an invisible thread. "I'm not sure how to thank you properly," Gabriel said. "What you did, it was more than a dress." Clara inhaled, steadying herself before words tumbled. "It healed me too," she admitted. "I'd lost faith in everything love stood for. Your project reminded me it can survive even when people don't." He considered that, shifting Lily's weight. "Maybe love's like fabric. It frays, but you can mend it into something new." Clara smiled. "With the right tailor." Their laughter merged, shy but bright. A breeze rustled nearby leaves, carrying notions of spring. Gabriel's gaze dropped to the sleeping child, then back to Clara. "Would you and Eve, your assistant, like to design christening gowns as a line? I could help market them." There must be other families wanting heirlooms repurposed. The proposal surprised her. She'd never considered diversifying, but as she imagined shelves lined with vintage gowns awaiting transformation, her pulse quickened. "I'd like that," she said. "Very much." "Good." He exhaled, looking lighter. "We could discuss it over coffee. Or dinner, maybe, if you'd want to." She felt a blush crawl across her cheeks. "I would," he grinned, an unguarded, boyish grin that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Then it's a date." Clara reached out to adjust Lily's bonnet, letting her fingertips brush Gabriel's hand. This time, neither of them pulled away. Inside Clara, the broken seams of her beliefs drew together, anchored by new, sturdy thread. That evening, back at Mirabelle Bridal, Clara hung Lily's leftover lace swatches on a mood board labeled Future Projects. The shop smelled of sun-warmed cotton and the sweet ghost of baptismal incense clinging to her dress. She flipped the sign on the door from closed to open, though business hours were long past. Light spilled onto the sidewalk like spilled champagne, festive and promising. Clara sat at her work table and sketched a christening gown design inspired by lily buds and sunrise. Her pencil traced lines with steady confidence. She no longer heard the echo of her sister's thwarted vows, only the murmur of possibility. Beyond the studio window, the city's neon halo rose, but inside, only a humble desk lamp illuminated her page, a beacon nonetheless. Love, she realized, was not flawless. It snagged, tore, discolored. But in the hands of a patient tailor, its fabric could be refashioned into something equally, if not more, beautiful. She threaded her needle, knotted the end, and began sewing the first stitch of the next chapter with a quiet smile that felt like dawn